Hi, I'm James Norton here with the Weekend UpTake. I'm joined by Maria Surma Manka, an energy expert. You're also a blogger at mariaenergia.blogspot.com and a PR professional for Thunheim Partners. Welcome. Thanks so much for coming on.
Thanks for having me.
So let me set up why we've got you here today. Michelle Bachmann's been making some very exciting remarks about energy policy recently, saying that it's time for people to get armed and dangerous about the Obama administration's plan for a cap-and-trade energy emissions plan. For people who haven't been following this necessarily to the letter, what is the Obama plan? What is cap-and-trade, and what has got Michelle Bachmann so upset?
Cap and trade is when policymakers review the science that's been done about climate change and decide that there needs to be a limit on our climate change emissions. Once that limit's decided, usually large polluting companies like utilities or automobile manufacturers are given requirements for how much they need to reduce their emissions by what date. And if there are companies that are able to reduce their emissions further than what the government requires, they're issued credits. And they're able to then turn around and trade or sell those credits to companies who can't or won't reduce their emissions far enough. So it creates a market for carbon dioxide, and it becomes like a commodity that can be traded among businesses.
No, it's an interesting theory. Has anyone ever put this into practice before, or is this something that the Obama administration wants to try out for the first time?
The U.S. has actually had a cap and trade policy for sulfur dioxide. Mm-hmm. The scheme was created in 1990 with the Clear Air Act under the first Bush administration, and sulfur dioxide causes acid rain, and so a cap and trade system was implemented and is considered across the board to be very successful, cutting emissions faster than expected at about a third the cost of what policymakers anticipated.
Now, Bachmann's contention, if I'm correct, is that this is basically simply going to pass pollution costs directly on to consumers. It could cost, I think she's throwing the number as much as $600 a person in Minnesota around. Is that a fair contention? Is that somewhat true? What is she basing that on?
Obama's plan, and a lot of policymakers have talked about creating a cap and trade policy where there are going to be costs to utilities, mm-hmm. and utilities are likely going to pass those on to consumers.
Okay.
But to balance that out, President Obama is also advocating for middle-class tax cuts, using the money from this cap and trade system that the government would get to then give a middle-class tax cut to people to balance out any sort of costs that businesses would be passing on.
So he's explicitly promising a wash, that it's going to not really particularly cost you more or less.
Essentially.
Okay. And why do a cap and trade system as opposed to simply a tax on emissions? You emit thus and such amount of carbon and you're taxed thus and such amount. Why go with a trade system instead?
The biggest benefit to a cap and trade is that you can declare the limit that you need on carbon dioxide emissions, and then you can measure your progress towards that limit to slow climate change as fast as we can.
Mm-hmm. Why bother doing this at all? What's the concern on the administration's part about carbon emissions?
Well, science tells us that we need to cut our emissions 80% by 2050 in order to avoid the worst of climate change's effects. But even if you don't buy that argument at all, even if you reject that science, there's no disagreement that we're in an energy crisis. We need more efficient energy. We need more renewable energy. We need to be smarter about our uses and stop sending our money overseas. And so creating a system like a cap and trade creates a market for innovative technologies, for new jobs, and a new economy that can make America stronger.
Well, Maria, thank you so much for joining us here on the Weekend UpTake. In just about a minute here, we're going to have a little bit of video from the floods up in Fargo. Then we're going to be looking at a clip from DFL gubernatorial hopeful Matt Intenza, which actually plays into our upcoming roundtable segment. We'll be talking about the 2010 race for governor, both the DFL and Republican side, among other things. So please stay tuned here with us on the Weekend UpTake.